The countdown reached 0 and Tarek Osman stepped through the portal into hell. That was what the Galactic Survival Trial was colloquially known as, a testing ground so brutal that most species required a century to complete it, and many never finished at all. The trial was designed to push sapient beings to their absolute limits, testing endurance, adaptation, problem-solving, and willpower across 7 distinct biomes, each one more lethal than the last. Tarek was the first human to attempt it. "This is madness," observer Priyal Zenth said from her monitoring station, her crystalline body refracting light in patterns that indicated deep concern. The human has no idea what he is walking into. The fastest completion time in 3,000 years is 97 standard years by a Thoraxian endurance specialist. Most species take between 120 and 150 years. Many die trying. Her colleague, observer Kelthik Svarn, made a gesture of agreement with 2 of his 6 arms. The human requested no preparation time. No briefing on the biomes. No equipment beyond basic survival tools. He said, and I quote, "I would like to get this done quickly." He treats the Century Trial like an afternoon errand. Deathworlders, Priyal said with a mixture of fascination and horror. They evolved on a planet so hostile that they developed biological and psychological traits that make them fundamentally incompatible with rational fear responses. This human probably does not understand the magnitude of what he has undertaken. Then he will learn, Kelthik said. The trial teaches all participants humility. Usually through suffering. They turned their attention to the monitoring arrays. Thousands of sensors throughout the trial zones would track every moment of the human's journey. The data would be invaluable. No Deathworlder species had ever attempted the trial. The Galactic Science Council was watching with intense interest. Tarek emerged into the first biome, the frozen wastes. Temperature, minus 70 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere, breathable but thin. Hazards, ice storms, crevasses, thermal predators that hunted based on body heat signatures. Most species built shelter immediately and spent years developing sustainable heating systems before attempting to cross the 500-kilometer expanse to the next zone. Tarek looked around, took a deep breath of the frigid air, and started running. "What is he doing?" Priyal asked, her patterns flashing with alarm. "He is moving at high speed in an environment where a single misstep could send him into a crevasse. Does he not understand the danger?" "Perhaps he is panicking," Kelthik suggested. Fear responses can override logic in many species. But Tarek was not panicking. He was applying a simple calculation: his body would generate heat while moving. The faster he moved, the warmer he would stay. And humans were persistence runners, evolved to chase prey across vast distances on their hostile homeworld. 500 kilometers? He had run ultramarathons on Earth that were almost that long. His equipment was minimal: a thermal suit designed to retain body heat, basic navigation tools, emergency rations. He had studied the map during the 60-second portal countdown. Straight line across the wastes. Avoid obvious hazards. Keep moving. A thermal predator detected him, a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and an insect, designed to survive in extreme cold. It moved to intercept. Tarek saw it coming. Changed direction slightly. Picked up speed. The predator gave chase. It was fast for a creature adapted to frozen environments. But Tarek was faster over distance. The predator could sprint. Tarek could run forever. 10 kilometers later, the predator gave up, exhausted and overheated from the pursuit. Tarek kept running. "Impossible," Priyal breathed. "He has been moving continuously for 3 hours. No shelter. No rest. He is 1/10 of the way through the first biome and shows no signs of slowing. What is his core body temperature?" "Elevated. But not dangerously so. He is generating enough metabolic heat to compensate for the environment. His species' thermoregulation is remarkably efficient." "How is that possible?" "Humans evolved on a planet with extreme temperature variations. Their bodies developed sophisticated systems for both heating and cooling. They can function in environments ranging from desert heat to Arctic cold. This trial was not designed with such adaptability in mind. Tarek ran for 18 hours straight. He crossed the frozen wastes in a single sustained push, eating energy bars while running, drinking from melted ice, never stopping long enough for the cold to penetrate his core. When he reached the portal to the second biome, the observers were stunned. He completed the first zone in less than a day, Kelthik said, his vocal apparatus struggling to form the words. The record was 7 years. He shattered it by a factor of thousands. What is the second biome? Priyal asked, though she already knew. The scorching barrens. Average temperature 110 degrees Celsius. No water sources. Solar radiation at lethal levels. Most species require decades to develop adequate protection and water reclamation systems. The human will die, Kelthik said with certainty. No being can cross that environment quickly. The heat will kill him. Tarek stepped through the portal into an oven. The scorching barren stretched before him, endless dunes of sand that radiated heat like a physical force. The sun hung overhead, massive and merciless. The temperature readout on his equipment immediately spiked to 112 degrees Celsius. Most species would have retreated immediately. Tarek assessed the situation with the calm of someone who had grown up on a planet where deserts regularly exceeded 50 degrees Celsius and humans had learned to survive them. His advantage: humans were one of the best cooling systems in nature. Sweating. Other species had to pant or seek shade or use other less efficient methods. Humans could dump heat through evaporative cooling across their entire skin surface. The disadvantage: this required water. Lots of water. Water he did not have. But Tarek had studied the breathing materials during his flight to the trial station. The scorching barrens were 500 kilometers of desert. Most species tried to establish sustainable water reclamation before attempting the crossing. Tarek had a different approach. He started running again. Fast. He is going to die, Priyal said. There is no water in that biome. He cannot possibly cross it before dehydration kills him. Wait, Kelthik said, magnifying the sensor view. What is he doing? Tarek had taken off his thermal suit, useless in this heat, and was wearing only minimal clothing. He had doused himself with the last of his water supply. And he was running at a pace that seemed suicidal. But there was method in the madness. The faster he moved, the faster he would cross the desert. Yes, he would sweat more. But he would also reduce total exposure time. It was a calculated gamble. Could he cross 500 kilometers before fatal dehydration set in? For humans, who had evolved to run down prey across African savannas under brutal sun, the answer was yes. Barely. Tarek ran through the day. Through the night when temperatures dropped only slightly. Through the next day. He ran until his legs felt like they would collapse. Ran until his mouth was so dry he could not swallow. Ran until his vision started to blur and his body screamed for water. And then he saw the portal to the third biome. He stumbled through it and collapsed. The third biome was the drowning deep, an aquatic environment where most species spend years developing underwater habitats and pressure adaptation. Tarek fell into water. Cold, life-giving water. He drank deeply, his body absorbing the moisture like a desert absorbing rain. After 10 minutes, he felt strong enough to assess his surroundings. The drowning deep was an ocean. Deep, dark, filled with pressure that would crush most beings at lower depths. The portal to the fourth biome was at the ocean floor, 800 meters down. Most species built submarines. Developed pressure suits. Created elaborate systems to survive the descent. Tarek had watched enough documentation about human freedivers to know his species had a trick that most aliens did not, the mammalian dive reflex. When humans submerged their faces in cold water, their bodies automatically adjusted, heart rate slowed, blood flow redirected to core organs, oxygen consumption reduced. He could not dive 800 meters. That would kill even a human. But he did not need to. He just needed to get deep enough to find the thermal vents that the briefing materials mentioned. Those vents powered the ecosystems at depth, which meant there were creatures that traveled between the surface and the depths. Creatures he could follow or ride. It took him 6 hours of swimming and diving to locate a pack of massive whale-like creatures that were heading down. 6 hours of using breath-holding techniques that would have impressed the best freedivers on Earth. 6 hours of using his mammalian heritage to do what most aliens could not: function underwater without equipment. He grabbed onto one of the creatures. Let it carry him down into the depths. The pressure increased. His ears screamed. His lungs burned. But humans were adaptable. Humans could endure. At 800 meters, he found the portal. Stepped through. Emerged in the fourth biome. This is not possible, Priel said, her crystalline structure flickering with patterns that indicated she might be experiencing a malfunction. He has completed 3 biomes in under 30 hours. Combined. The previous record for those 3 zones was 182 years. What is happening? Kelfix asked. How is a single being, one that we classified as relatively primitive based on their technology level, demolishing records set by the galaxy's greatest survival experts? Because we fundamentally misunderstood what Deathworlders are, Priel said quietly. We saw their violent tendencies, their aggressive expansion, their willingness to take risks. We labeled them dangerous, primitive, brutal. But we did not see the other side of that coin. What other side? The side that makes them dangerous is the same side that makes them exceptional survivors. They evolved on a planet trying to kill them every single day. They developed not just violence, but adaptation. Not just aggression, but endurance. Not just risk-taking, but calculated problem-solving under pressure. They are not completing this trial through strength. They are completing it through the accumulated evolutionary advantages of being forged in hell and refusing to give up. The fourth biome was the toxic jungle, a rainforest where every plant and animal was poisonous. The air itself was barely breathable, filled with spores and chemicals. Most species required extensive filtration systems and antitoxin development. Tarek wrapped cloth around his face as a basic filter and started moving. Humans had remarkable livers, organs designed to process toxins. His ancestors had survived by eating plants that were slightly poisonous, building up tolerances. His immune system was a weapon shaped by millions of years of fighting pathogens. Would it be enough? He was about to find out. The jungle was 700 kilometers of hostile plant life. Tarek moved quickly, touching as little as possible. When he was forced to eat, because even human endurance had limits, he chose fruits that looked similar to earth plants his species had evolved eating. Pattern recognition. Educated gambling. He was sick twice. Violently sick. But his body fought off the toxins. Adapted. Continued. 16 hours after entering the jungle, he emerged from the other side and stepped through the portal to the fifth biome. The crushing abyss was a canyon system with gravity 3 times galactic standard. Most species required years to develop strength and skeletal reinforcement to navigate it. Tarek felt the gravity slam into him like a physical weight. His knees buckled. Every movement became a struggle. But humans were persistence animals. Humans were endurance specialists. Humans had evolved to keep moving no matter how much their bodies hurt. He crawled when he could not walk. He walked when he could not run. He rested only when absolutely necessary. 500 kilometers of hell. Every meter earned through suffering. 28 hours later, broken and exhausted, he reached the 6th biome. The living storm was exactly what it sounded like, an environment of constant electromagnetic storms, hurricane-force winds, and atmospheric chaos. Most species built heavily shielded bunkers and waited for breaks in the weather that came once every few years. Tarek looked at the maelstrom and made a simple calculation: could he cross it before it killed him? Probably not. But he was going to try anyway. Because that was what humans did. They attempted the impossible and succeeded often enough to make it seem routine. He fashioned a crude shelter from his remaining equipment. used it like a shield against the wind. Moved forward 1 brutal meter at a time. Lightning struck all around him. The wind tried to tear him from the ground. The noise was deafening. He kept moving. 36 hours later, deaf in one ear and bleeding from multiple electrical burns, he stumbled through the portal to the 7th and final biome. The Valley of Echoes was psychological warfare. An environment that projected memories, fears, and hallucinations. Most species required decades of mental fortification before attempting the crossing. Tarek saw ghosts of everyone he had ever failed. Every mistake he had made. Every moment of doubt and fear. He ignored them. Because humans had one more evolutionary advantage that the aliens had not accounted for: spite. The sheer bloody-minded refusal to give up just because something was hard. You cannot do this, his hallucinations told him. This is impossible. You should quit. You should rest. You should accept defeat. No, Tarek said aloud. I do not think I will. He walked through his fears. Past his doubts. Beyond his limits. 8 hours later, he emerged from the Valley of Echoes and stood before the completion portal. The timer on his equipment read, 24 hours, 47 minutes, 32 seconds. In the observation center, absolute silence reigned. Priyal and Kelthix stared at displays that defied belief. Numbers that should not be possible. A completion time that was less than 1/10,000th of the previous record. The Galactic Council is going to think our sensors malfunctioned, Kelthix said finally. We have redundant verification, Priyal replied. Triple-checked. The human-designated Tarek Osman completed the Century Trial in 1 day. Not an approximation. Not an error. 1 actual day. What do we tell them? How do we explain this? We tell them the truth. We tell them that we fundamentally misunderstood what it means to be a Deathworlder. We thought it meant they were dangerous to others. We did not realize it meant they were dangerous to the concept of impossible itself. Tarek stepped through the completion portal and found himself in a reception area where dozens of alien species waited to greet trial completers. The room went silent as he entered. Everyone stared. Congratulations on completing the trial, an automated voice said. Please state your species and completion time for the record. Human, Tarek said, his voice hoarse from dehydration and exhaustion. Tarek Osman. Time, approximately 1 day. The room exploded in chaos. Aliens demanding verification. Others insisting on sensor recalibration. Some simply refusing to believe. Priyal entered the room, her crystalline body flashing with authoritative patterns. The completion is verified. The human has achieved the fastest trial completion in recorded history by a factor of more than 35,000. How? Demanded a Thoraxian elder, the species that had held the previous record. Our finest endurance specialist required 97 years. How does a primitive Deathworlder complete it in a single rotation? Because, Priyal said slowly, we built a trial designed to test species from normal worlds. Worlds with reasonable climates. Predictable dangers. We never considered what would happen when we tested someone from a planet where survival itself requires constant adaptation to extreme conditions. She gestured to Tarek, who was drinking water like his life depended on it, which it probably did. Humans evolved on a world that has frozen tundras and scorching deserts. Underwater environments and oxygen-poor heights. Toxic plants and dangerous predators. Gravity and pressure variations. Their entire evolutionary history is the trial. They did not spend a century learning to survive each biome because they have already spent millions of years learning to survive all of them simultaneously. But the psychological challenges, another alien protested. The Valley of Echoes breaks most minds. Humans have another advantage there, Priyal said. They call it spite. The refusal to quit simply because something is difficult. They evolved it as a survival trait. When faced with impossible odds, they do not calculate probability of success. They simply decide they are going to succeed and then refuse to stop until they do. Tarek finally looked up from his water. Is there a prize for fastest completion? Ah, yes, stammered the Thraxian elder. Traditionally, the fastest completers receive recognition from the Galactic Council and opportunities for prestigious positions throughout Council space. Great! Can I do it again? The room went silent again. You want to repeat the trial? Kelthix asked, entering the room. Why would you voluntarily subject yourself to that again? Because I made mistakes, Tarek said calmly. The frozen wastes, I could have gone faster if I had optimized my route better. The scorching barrens took too long. I know where I lost time. I think I can complete it in under 20 hours if I apply what I learned. You barely survived. Priyal exclaimed. You were at the edge of fatal dehydration. You have electrical burns. You are partially deaf. Yeah, but I survived. And now I know what to expect. That is valuable data. I can do better. He stood up, swaying slightly. But first, I need to eat. Sleep for maybe 6 hours. Treat these burns. Then I am ready for round 2. The alien stared at him with a mixture of horror and awe. This was what Deathworlders were. Not just violent. Not just dangerous. But possessed of a fundamental inability to acknowledge that something could not be done. Before you attempt that, Priyal said carefully, would you be willing to answer some questions? The scientific community has enormous interest in how you achieve this. Sure. What do you want to know? Everything. How you made decisions so quickly. How you maintained such a pace. How you survived environments that should have killed you. We thought we understood survival. You have shown us we do not. Tarek shrugged. It is really not that complicated. You built a trial designed to be the worst possible conditions for survival. The problem is, Earth already did that. Every environment you threw at me, I have read about humans surviving worse on my own planet. The frozen wastes? We have Antarctica and Siberia. The scorching desert? We have the Sahara and Death Valley. Toxic jungle? The Amazon has regions humans should not survive. Crushing gravity? We climb mountains where the air is too thin to breathe. Living storm? We have hurricanes and typhoons. Psychological warfare? Have you met the human subconscious? It does that to us every night while we sleep. He paused. You did not build a trial that tested the limits of survival. You built a trial that was basically a slightly more extreme version of an Earth vacation. Uncomfortable? Yes. Deadly? Only if I made stupid mistakes. Impossible? No. Because humans do not accept impossible. We just see it as a challenge we have not solved yet. The room was silent as the implications sank in. There is something else you should know, Tarek added. I am not even particularly special among humans. I am moderately fit. Reasonably smart. Decently experienced. But I am not an elite athlete or a survival expert or a genius. I am just a guy who likes hiking and thought this sounded interesting. If you want to see what humans can really do, wait until our actual specialists attempt this. The endurance athletes. The survival experts. The people who do extreme sports for fun. You are saying there are humans who could do this faster than you? Kelthix asked, though he sounded like he did not want to know the answer. Oh yeah. Easily. There are humans who run ultramarathons across deserts for fun. Who freedive to depths that should be impossible. Who climb mountains without equipment because ropes are boring. I am nothing compared to them. I just got here first. Priyal's crystalline structure dimmed to nearly transparent, the equivalent of a human going pale. You are telling us the Deathworlders consider survival challenges to be entertainment? Some of us do. Earth is dangerous enough that we evolved to find danger exciting rather than terrifying. It is a psychological adaptation. If our ancestors had been paralyzed by fear every time they encountered something dangerous, they would have never left their caves. So we developed a different response: curiosity and excitement. We see dangerous situations as problems to solve, not threats to avoid. This explains so much about human behavior, Priel said quietly. And it terrifies me. We welcomed you into galactic society thinking you were merely another species. We did not realize we were admitting the equivalent of walking natural disasters. Beings who look at our greatest survival trial and treat it like a morning jog. We are not that bad, Tarek protested. Most humans are perfectly peaceful. We just do not give up easily. And we are good at not dying. Those are positive traits, right? They are when you are on our side, Kelthik said. But they are absolutely terrifying when we consider what you are capable of. A species that treats impossible challenges as entertainment. That refuses to acknowledge limits. That evolved on a planet so hostile that the worst we can create is merely moderately inconvenient to you. Look, Tarek said, I understand this is surprising. But think of it as an opportunity. You built this trial to test the limits of survival. Now you know what those limits actually are. And the answer is, much higher than you thought. Humans can help you understand survival in ways you have not considered. We have spent our entire existence figuring out how to not die in increasingly creative ways. That is valuable knowledge. Over the following months, news of the human trial completion spread throughout galactic civilization. It became the most studied event in survival science history. Teams of researchers descended on Earth, desperate to understand what made humans so capable. They learned about persistence hunting, about endurance running, about sweating and hairlessness evolved for cooling, about efficient bipedalism, about omnivorous diets that let humans eat almost anything, about complex tool use that let humans modify any environment, about psychological resilience forged by millions of years of surviving on a planet trying to kill them. And they learned fear. Not of human violence that had always been apparent, but of human capability. Of a species that looked at the galaxy's greatest challenges and saw opportunities. That treated survival trials as entertainment. That refused to acknowledge that something could not be done. Tarek became famous. He gave lectures, wrote a book, trained other humans who wanted to attempt the trial. 17 more humans completed it within the next year. All in under 48 hours. The human record was set by an ultra-endurance athlete who completed it in 15 hours, 23 minutes, running the entire thing essentially non-stop. The Galactic Council had to completely revise their understanding of what was possible. The Century Trial was renamed the Traditional Trial, and a new, much harder version was created specifically for Deathworlders. The first human completed that one in 3 days. 50 years later, Tarek sat in a teaching position at the Galactic Survival Academy, training the next generation of survival experts from across the galaxy. He was older now, grayer, but still fit. A young Thraxian student approached him nervously. Professor Osman, may I ask you something? Of course. Did you really complete the original trial in 1 day with no preparation? I did. How? How were you not terrified? How did you know you could do it? Tarek smiled. I did not know I could do it. I suspected I could. But that is the thing about humans, we do not wait for certainty. We try things. We fail. We learn. We try again. We keep going until we succeed or something actually kills us. And even then, other humans will learn from our mistakes and try again. But you could have died. Yes. But I could die crossing the street on Earth too. Life is risk. The question is whether the risk is worth it. And proving that humans could survive your trial? That was worth it. Because it opened doors. It changed how the galaxy sees us. It gave us opportunities we would not have had otherwise. Do you regret anything about it? Tarek thought for a moment. I regret not eating more before the scorching barrens. I regret not bringing better ear protection for the living storm. I regret not training my free diving more before the drowning deep. But do I regret attempting it? No. Never. Because that is what humans do. We attempt the impossible. And sometimes, we succeed. And when we do, impossible becomes merely difficult. And then it becomes routine. And then we look for the next impossible thing. That is insane. Probably. But it is also why humans survived when Earth tried to kill us for millions of years. It is why we made it to space. It is why we are here now, teaching other species what we learned by refusing to die. He stood up. The galaxy thought we were primitives because we fought and struggled and refused to give up. They saw our rough edges and our violence and our stubbornness. But they did not see that those same traits are what make us extraordinary survivors. We are not violent because we love fighting. We are violent because we love living, and sometimes fighting is what survival requires. You changed how the galaxy sees humans. I just did what any human would do. I saw a challenge. I attempted it. I refused to quit. The galaxy's understanding of us changed because they finally saw what we are actually capable of when we stop trying to fit in and start being ourselves. The student paused. Professor, there is a rumor that the Council is creating an even harder trial. One designed specifically to challenge Deathworlders. One that they claim even humans cannot complete quickly. Tarek's smile widened. When does it open? They have not announced it yet. They are still designing it. Tell them I will be first in line. Because that is what humans do. Someone says something is impossible. We prove them wrong. And then we do it again just to make sure it was not a fluke. You really are insane. Maybe. But I am also still here. Still teaching. Still pushing boundaries. Because humans do not accept limits. We just see them as starting points for negotiations with reality. And reality, I have found, tends to blink first. The student left, shaking his head but smiling. And Tarek returned to his work, already planning his next impossible achievement. Because that was what it meant to be human. Not fearless, humans felt fear. Not invincible, humans could be hurt. Not perfect, humans made mistakes. But persistent. Adaptable. Stubborn to the point of insanity. Unwilling to accept that something could not be done without at least trying. The galaxy had built a trial to test the limits of survival. Humans had shown them those limits were much further out than anyone imagined. And now they were looking for the next limit to push. The next impossible to make possible. The next challenge to turn into routine. Because that was what Deathworlders did. They survived what should kill them. They thrived where others would merely endure. They looked at the word impossible and treated it like a dare. And they won. Again and again and again. That was the lesson the galaxy learned from Tarek Osman and the Century Trial. Humans do not fear the impossible. They eat it for breakfast and ask for seconds. And the galaxy would never be the same. If you enjoyed the story, like the video and subscribe for more. Thank you.